Hey guys, it's Brian here with Sinister Gaming. Just wanted to showcase my first place case tournament Kashtira deck. So it was an X1 record in Swiss. That was 6 rounds, and I just won it all the way through to the top 8 and got first. And I'll just be going over my choices during the profile and a little bit more about the matchups afterwards. So let's get started. We got 3 Fenrir, 3 Unicorn, 2 Rise Heart, and then 1 Ogre and 1 Scareclaw. I decided to play the Ogre to keep the 5 zone lock in the picture, and it did come up quite a few times. It did 5 zone lock whenever I could, pretty much had it. And searching Big Bang is pretty good as well. So no changes there from the YCS list. Some of the Kashtira cards for the spells are the Theosis, 3 Planet, Terraforming, and the 3 Birth. So that's pretty standard stuff there. Wouldn't really change anything else. Some of the consistency cards / techs. So the Prosperity, the enemy controllers, and the triple tactics. I figured the tactics would have been better as opposed to a few weeks ago. So in Cybernetic Storm or Cybernetic Access, the super heavy deck's playing a lot of hand traps, and so is Purely. So we kind of need that to counter those decks, and even decks like Mathmech as well. Enemy controller is for when you hand trap your opponent, which I'll be showcasing just shortly after this. As far as what hand traps I'm playing, but this is like to out Baguska and stuff when you stun your opponent from hand traps. And it's also still good in the mirror in case anyone's still up on it and wants to stick to it until it gets hit, like me. And then the last card is Big Bang for the regular cards, and then for the hand traps, which is pretty much, I think, the way to move forward with this deck. So yeah, we're on the 3 Shifter, 3 Ash, 2 Droll, 1 Mourner, and 3 Imperm. I liked these ratios quite a bit. I think the card that performed insanely was Shifter. I think whenever I had it, it was pretty much a free win. Note that most of these cards are going to play around Gamma to an extent, with the exception of Droll. I think moving forward, I would actually not play this, just because in every scenario where I could have just draw phase, drop Shifter, or, you know, on first search of using some kind of spell card or like the super heavy Samurai Bike, my opponent always had Gamma. So I would just scrap that altogether and just not even bother. So I've just been waiting for my opponent to commit a play so I can Shifter them. So that even continues to something like Mathmech. I would let them send Sigma with Circular and let them commit the summons, and then I'll Shifter them. That usually leads to Laplacian Pass, banishing the materials, which is pretty bad, especially if their hand traps are going to require hitting the grave. So, I mean, it sounds a little weird explaining why Shifter is such a good card for this format, but it has multi-utilities just to protect yourself from other hand traps. And yeah, it's just probably a win button more than ever. Probably since Tier Element format, but I'd say it's probably even stronger. I'd argue it's even stronger than it was during Tier format. Just because some decks cannot consistently Baguska Pass like Tier could. Ash is for Branded Fusion. The Moonlit Chill was pretty nice whenever I had it. And it's just another level 3 tuner for Baron. I think I'd bump this up to 2 and drop the Droll, and then maybe consider playing something else for the 40th card, maybe Called by the Grave or something. Imperm was just fine. It did its job. I didn't see it that often, but it did save me from getting life point gained in time, so it did save me from losing in time from a Runic Sprite for higher deck. Yeah, so I'll just get into the extra deck. So for my prosperity targets, I was on the Skull King and the Garura. I would say none of these really did anything. I did draw one time from the Garura. I never resolved Skull Knight, but in theory it's good against the super heavy build or the super heavy deck. Maybe Skull Wagon was the correct choice for those other matchups that are going to more consistently out-air a Rise Heart. I just figured this was good going into super heavy when they try to out my Rise Heart with Baguska. So I think that was the main thing there. It's not that crazy against Purelli, doesn't really do anything against them. I just figured this format would be a little bit more monster heavy and least trade with a negate on my follow-up turn. And theirs would just be less spells and traps, but moving forward, I'm not really sure. I could see this being the, like I said, the Skull Wagon, or maybe even Track, depending on the ban list, assuming this deck's still alive. And then we got the one Donner. It's just mainly to play it under Ibli by normal summoning another monster like Rise Heart, or birth summoning a monster, or birth normal summoning a monster like Fenrir or Unicorn, searching with it and then linking it away. And then this also outs Baguska, which I did a couple times in the tournament, once or twice. Baron I probably summoned more than I've ever had in my life in any deck. I don't know why, just sometimes the game states were so simplified, or I just get hand trapped so bad. I think making Baron was just the correct play. So I did make this once or twice to protect myself from other hand traps and stuff, but I'll be honest, a lot of times I did draw Shifter, so I didn't have to go into this step. I felt pretty safe just full comboing under that. And then we have double Big Eye, mainly just for the mirror match. And then the one Dark Arm Dragon. I surprisingly didn't use it as much as I did in past formats, or the past format. Diabolus, you need it for the 3 zone lock plus 5 or 5 zone lock. Yeah, pretty degenerate, and yeah, it did its job. A few times I just had my opponent hit their Garnets or key important pieces out of their deck from his effect, so it's kind of like winning for free almost. And then we have the 2 Shangri-Ira, 3 Rise Heart. Still need 3 Rise Heart just because people are playing this deck somewhat. And then lastly, the 2 Zeus for the same reason. People are on this deck still. I didn't play any mirror matches, I somehow missed them all, but there was at least one other player in the top cut for that event. So I was prepared for it for the most part. And then for the side deck, it's 2 Humongous. I was on 3 on the YCS, but I needed space to fit in other tech cards in the side. I did see this pretty often, and it did out a Baguska for me, so that was nice. Sadly, I didn't draw it against the Purelli when they Noir'd me, but yeah, there's a few combinations of cards that can out Noir pretty easily in this deck, such as the enemy controller, once they run out of materials, or any less than 5. So pretty much when they do 1 spin back, they're no longer going to have 5 materials, so you can just pretty much enemy controller or something from there. But this is also another out to that. And then the 3 Bell for the Super Factorial and Expulsion Lock. And also, an underrated interaction is that you can use it against Gamma. So I also side this in at least 2 of them to Super Heavy, because it'll just pretty much stop Gamma when I'm going first or second. The 2 Dark Ruler. This was fine. Yeah, it just didn't really come up too much. I didn't really draw it. 2 Cosmic, need it for Runic, and then just any Floodgate type decks and Labyrinth and such. So there was a Labyrinth at the top 8, so glad I kept it in. And then you can also use this to counter decks that you think are playing Anti-Spell, which I've seen a couple and lost to an Anti-Spell Fragrance in a game before. And then Lightning Storm, I'm choosing it over Evenly just because it's more active. I I can just use it right away without having to commit my battle phase, and it'll bait 1 negate, and that's almost enough sometimes just to break the board, so unless it's like Stereo or an Eternity Beast. I actually did use this against Eureka to blow away his back row, so that's pretty nice. Another thing here is just Harpies, kind of just side this versus everything as well, for the mirror and stuff like that. Change a heart mainly for the mirror when I go second, because I usually choose to go second with this deck in the mirror. And then lastly, the card that just kind of overperformed as well, in addition to the shifter, was the 2 summon limit. Every time I sided this in going first, I pretty much won. I would just let them commit 1 summon and then flip this up, or the idea was also that if they commit 1 or 2 plays to bait out a Rise Heart, to either triple tactics it or to allow Kurakara to fulfill its condition to tribute away, you know, 1 or 2 monsters. They're gonna use 1 or 2 monsters to bait it out. So on the second summon of that monster, I can flip this and then they can't Kurakara you. And even better, or should I say another scenario, would be if they kaiju'd you and then they summoned 1 monster to extend into another, or attempt to extend to another monster. You can just flip this and that'll pretty much just seal the game there, because all your monsters are going to be bigger, just because, you know, you kind of just go caveman mode as soon as you have your board out. And Fenrir and Unicorn just keep giving you value and chip away your opponent's board 1 at a time. So yeah, that was pretty good. You can just pretty much use it against every matchup. So the matchups I had, I played against a Sprite round 1. That one was 2-1, I believe. And then he got the die roll on that one. And then round 2 was a Math Mech deck. I just drew Shifter pretty much both games. And that one was kind of quick just because of that sack. And then game 3, I had played, or match 3 I had played against Purelli, and he won the die roll on that one as well. Or actually I won the die roll on that one, and I 5 zone locked. And then game 2, I just couldn't out the Noir. I had no non-engine pieces, just only engine, and it was only a Unicorn and a Fenrir, so can't really do much with that. Oh, and a Theosis, but that pretty much just plays into the Purelli too much, the Noir. Round 4, I played against Super Heavy, 2-1, though it probably should have been a 2-0 just because I misplayed a couple times in that game. And then I played against Runic Sprite for Hire, which I lost to in time because of Moonin Gain 1000. And I had 5 zone locked in game 1, or yeah, game 1, so it's pretty fair. And then in round 6, I had played another Math Mech and had won that one 2-1. And then in the top 8, I played against another Super Heavy player. We had a really funny game 2 just because we were hand trap warring each other. Again, I misplayed in that one, but maybe it could have been a 2-0 just because there was a simplified game state in which we both had our Barons. We both had made Baron to Fleur, and then he had like 1 or 2 cards in hand, but no starters, no 1-card starters, just a bunch of hand traps. And I had Birth plus Baron and Field Spell, so I didn't even realize that. I tried to Baron pop his Baron, but I just totally forgot I could have just swung over his Baron because I had Field Spell up, and it would have been 100 bigger. But we still got the dub anyway, so, but we realized our mistake and we make note of it. And then in top 4, I played against the Sprite Runic for Hire player again. We were about to go into time, but the top cut rules say that you check at the end of turns. So he had breaking my board pretty easily in games 3, and then set up a really great board, and then try to gain life points using the Wiz for Hire monster. But I had Imperm for that, and he had no negate for it, no for Hires in hand to negate that. But long story short, it ended up being my match just for the sake of unicorn swinging at the Fogo for 100, and no way he could get to Runic Slumber or gain 1,000 at his end phase, or at my end phase. So it's pretty much game there. And then in the finals, I played against Rika, which I have never played against it before in person, but the guy topped the LA, YCS LA as well. He got top 8. Shoutouts to him and Nightmare TCG. So yeah, I got pretty lucky in game 1. I just did a 3-zone lock on him, and then game 2 I drew really good for the game state that I had. I had Shifter in game 2, Lightning Storm, Imperm, and like a starter card, so yeah, it's pretty rough. But yeah, that was pretty much it, guys. If you want to know more about the build or my thoughts on Kashtira moving forward, I think this is still the best deck in the room, especially a build like this where it's quite flexible into every matchup. You know, it could be a little bit better against the back row matchups, but you know, we're taking those dubs against Super Heavy and trying to get against Pirelli. I feel like that one's a little bit of a rougher matchup. But yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.